So we started off with Eliezer Avram. Eliezer Avram makes a siman. The Klei Yukar asks a gewaltige question, and before the Klei Yukar, it's in the Rosh Hashanah. Avram Avinu is troubled, and he calls Eliezer, and he says, Loi tikach isha lebni mebnois aknani. El arzi ve'el moiladeti teilech. Go back to Choron, to Ur Kasdim, to my family that I left behind when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told me, Lech lecha, and look for a kala for my son there. And the question is, why there? Avram Avinu's family weren't great tzaddikim. He had to fight his father. They all were oivdei malilim. They all were oivdei avodah zorah. And Dafka B'Eretz Canaan, he had thousands of Talmidim. The Rambam writes at the beginning of Hilchos Avodas Kechovim, Nigbetzu Elov Alofim V'Ravavois, V'Shosal B'Libam, Ha'ikar HaGodel of Emunas HaYochad. Why doesn't he look for a kala by one of his Talmidim? And why does he send Eliezer back to Oivdei Avodah Zorah? So the Klei Yukar explains, and before the Klei Yukar is the Rosh Hashanah. When Avraham Avinu lays the foundation for Klal Yisrael, the most important thing is Midas Toivos. The Gemara says in hiöםhשחור, Shlosha Simonim Yesh Ba'uma Zu. Klal Yisrael is characterized by three midos. Rachmonim, Baishonim, Goim Lechasodim. They're modest, they're humble, and the people of compassion. That is what Klal Yisrael is about. And there's a Mishnah Masechet Avos. Eizem Talmidav Shel Avraham Avinu. Those that are Boki and Bavli and Yerushalmi, those who remember every sif in Mishnah Brura, Talmidav Shel Avraham Avinu, Kol sheyesh bo ayin toivo, ruach nemucha, v'nefesh shveila. And who are the Talmidim of Bilam? Yesh lo Ayin Ra, Ruach Gavoya, V'nefesh Rechava. So what is most important to Avraham Avinu is Midas Toivos, and he knows his family that they have Midas Toivos. Avraham is not concerned about Avodah Zorah, because in Avraham's home, Avodah Zorah is just impossible. The light of Emes was so radiant and so obvious. In Avraham's home, he's not concerned about Avodah Zorah. What most troubles him is Midas Toivos, and that's why he says, go back there. And Eliezer, understanding what troubles Avraham Avinu, says, I need to find a girl that has crazy midas, to the extreme. So he says, I'm arriving a strong, able-bodied young person, and I have a lot of slaves with me. And this girl will say, I'm going to fetch water for you. The most natural thing would be for Rivka to say, here's the well, here's the bucket. Please, as much water as you want. And she should sit and decide. She was a young girl. He's an able-bodied, strong man with an entourage of people. And she says, you sit and you rest. And she is the one drawing water for the well. And she drew a lot of water because it was a caravan of camels. Camels drink a lot. Some people think that in the hump on the camel's back, full of water, which it is not. But the camel is a desert animal, so it doesn't have much to drink usually. So when camels drink, they drink. And Rivka, a young girl, lets all those big guys sit and rest, and she is the one that draws the water. That's far beyond normalcy. It's far beyond what would be expected from a decent girl. But Eliezer knows that the girl I am looking for is not only a decent girl. She's a balas midas. She has rachmones above and beyond the call of duty, above and beyond what should be normally expected. That is the siman Eliezer makes. And therefore, he knows, when that is exactly what Rivka offers, he knows this is Min HaShamayim, this is Hashgacha Pratis, and this is the one that Kodesh Baruch Hu designated to build Klal Yisrael, to lay the foundations for Umazu Shem Rachmonim, Baishonim, Vegamli Chesonim. So this week I had Yortzeit. My mother passed away 3 years ago at the age of 93. She was a Holocaust survivor, like my father. They both were in Auschwitz. Both lost most of their families, grandparents, parents, and most of their siblings. My father was left 3 out of 8. My mother was left 2 out of 5 siblings. And when she passed away, she had 500 descendants, Beli Ayin Hara, all Shoymrei Torah v'mitzvos. Many of them are Bitzei Torah. And she used to say, this is my Nakama and this is my Nechama. Both a Nakama and Nechama. On one hand, it's a Nakama. In the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, that thought of bringing the final solution. So a young girl that survived the Shoya, Baruch Hashem was Zoichet Torichas Yomim, and left 500 descendants. That's my Nakama, and that is my Nechama, Kodesh Baruch Hu Nichmani B'Kiflayim. And she was a very, very special person. And I always consider it Kibud Em, to tell a bit about my parents when the Yortzeit comes. And it is also important that we have so much to learn from these people. So many times I jokingly said, whatever we have today is more muhudar than what we had 100 years ago. Our tefillin are much more muhudar than the old tefillin. We see tefillin, there are dakas that bend. Our Sifrei Torah today are far more beautiful and more muhudar than old Sifrei Torah we have from 60 or 70 years ago. Every Avreich today can have an esrik for 100 shekel that is more beautiful than the esrogim of the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon. Our Erevin and Mikvois are more muhudar than they ever were. Besides the people, everything is better today than it was. Besides the people. Alavai, we could compare to our parents and grandparents and previous generations. So we have so much to learn from these people. So my mother was a Holocaust survivor. She was extremely thirsty for knowledge. She had a gewaldige Tzemorin for Torah. When she was 90 years old, she initiated a shir and mishlei together with the neighbors. I don't even know a gadol that starts learning something when he's 90 years old. She was 90 years old, but she never learned mishlei. And she wanted to learn mishlei, so she initiated a shir once a week with her neighbors. One of my childhood memories, my late father was a gewaldige Talmid Chacham, and we grew up with Rabbi Yosef Engel. Next to his bed, there was always a pile of Sforim. Usually it was Rabbi Yosef Engel's Sforim. And one of my memories from my mother was the Perish of Reb Shamson Afol Hirsch on Tehillim in English. And I remember my mother sitting for hours with that black-binded Reb Shamson Afol Hirsch on Tehillim. She said a lot of Tehillim, and she wanted to understand. So it's Reb Shamson Afol Hirsch, a Rishon or an Achron. His writings are very profound. It's not an easy read. Reb Shamson Afol Hirsch was a philosopher and a great, great teacher and educator. So I remember my mother learning Reb Shamson Afol Hirsch on Tehillim. She was mole thanks for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yemole pite hilosecho. She never complained. Never. She had a stroke when she was 80 years old, and she was quite debilitated, using a walker after that. Whenever people used to ask her, how do you feel? she also had a sense of humor, and she used to say, I feel great. My knees don't carry me. I don't have my shoes of my left arm. I don't hear well. But that's my feet, that's my hand, that's my ears, that's not me. I feel great. She never complained about herself. She was always so thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in difficult times, we are living in the midst of a terrible war. And when tragedy strikes, people ask why. And I say, it's legitimate to ask questions. But why did it never occur to you when you had wonderful days of simcha and nachas, everybody was well, and you had parnasa becovered, and everybody is healthy, and things go fine? Did you ever ask then, why? Why? What did I do to deserve this? So why do people ask why only when things go bad? In the life of every person, the vast majority of people, 95% of the time, things are great. Sometimes people fall ill, sometimes tragedy strikes. It's inevitable. It's part of hashgocha. It's part of the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. But why do you ask why only when things go bad? I mean, did it ever occur to you when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you so much blessing and so much chesed to ask why? Why do I deserve this? Why are things so great? Maybe it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu just wants me to say thank you. Maybe it's just HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wants. The Novi says, Perek Mem Gimel Yeshayahu, Am zu yotzarti li, tihilosi yisaperu. And the Rishonim say, Am zu yotzarti li, kedei shetihilosi yisaperu. So it's natural that people will ask why. Why do I deserve this? Why this tragedy strike? But this, you should have asked this question 1,000 times all your life. Why? Why do I deserve all this brochas and all these wonderful things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does? So my mother asked why every day, and she thanked HaKadosh Baruch Hu every day, and that was part of who she was. She despised sheker, and never could she say one word that wasn't true. So after she had the stroke, and we turned to Bituach Leumi to get a Kitzbat Nechut. Social Security supports the disabled. So we invited a macher. Do you know what a macher is? You know what a macher is? No? I think it's in English, no? Our society is full of machers. You have a macher for Mishkantis, you have a macher for Bituach Leumi, you have a macher how to cheat the area, not pay arnona, you have a macher for everything. So somebody came to instruct my mother what to say when Bituach Leumi will come to visit and interview her and to see how much she deserves, how much support. So it was explained to your mother, you need to tell them how difficult life is and how unbearable it is and how much you're in suffering. But my wife asked, but life is great. What should I lie and say? So it was explained to her, but you can't walk without a walker. But she says, but the walker is okay and I could get everywhere where I need to get. And so she was instructed, when they come, first of all, you need to look like a nebuch. Don't dress up nicely. And just tell them how bad things are. So I remember when they knocked on the door, a social worker and a doctor from Bituach Leumi, first she ran to put on her sheitel. And we asked, why are you putting on your sheitel? She says, I never let a guest into the house if I wasn't dressed up properly. These are not guests. They're not guests. They're not family friends. It's a social worker from Bituach Leumi. And she said, anybody that comes into my house is a guest. So she dressed up nicely. She opened the door. And when they asked her, how you doing? She said, I'm doing fine, I'm doing great. You know, it's hard a little to get around. And as you could expect, we got a minimal support. Because if a woman is doing great and she's fine and she's not complaining, then... And when she was notified, you're not going to get a lot, she had no regrets. No regrets. She said, you know, I said the truth. I said what it is, and it is what it is, and I'm doing fine. And so I think our generation, this is an important lesson for our generation. So these are some of the things that we learned from our mother, and she should be a Melitzas Yosha for the big family she left behind and for Klal Yisrael, because we need a lot of Rachamei Shamayim. And as we learned in the Rambam today, Kol HaMerachim, Merachmim Olam Mishamayim Sheneva Venusa Lecho Rachamim Verechamecho Vehirbecho. We should only be Mevasa B'Soides Toivois, and we should see Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu B'mheru V'yomeinu Amen.